in a series of 4 webinars that we'll be running this fall, focusing on the President's Innovation Fund Round 2. The hope is that these webinars will provide support for those that are interested in proposing, have an idea that is in an incubation phase and needs to be developed some. We hope that you provide them useful. And I do have here with me Hanadi Saleh, who is my tech support person. And Hanadi, I'm getting a little bit of feedback from somebody. I think there's somebody's got a mic on. So if you can double check that, I would appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna move. Just repeat the last few things you said. No audio. I'm getting a no audio. Okay. Can everybody hear me now?
Back. Thank
you. All right, so I will repeat that. Back to slide 1. Love Hanadi. All right, welcome. This is number 1 webinar in a series of 4 webinars we are providing to support faculty who are interested in proposing an idea for this round 2 of the Innovation Fund. The schedule is on the website. The next one comes up in a couple of weeks, and we'll run it the same way as this one. I am Margaret Shippey. I serve in the role of Director of Faculty Development and Classroom Engagement, and I'm very happy to see so much interest and participation in the webinar today. So these are the topics we're going to go over. I'll run through a background of the fund. I'll take us through a walkthrough of the RFP and the review process. I will give an approximation of what you can expect if funded, and I'll explain why later. I say that's an approximation. I've invited some awardees, from the first round to share their experiences with us, so they are on the webinar as well and will join us later on, and then we'll take questions in the chat feature. So if everybody knows how to, we'll show you how to do that, but feel free to drop that question in there at any point and we'll address them at the end. So this is the structure of the webinar. We'll do a presentation from my side. We'll hear from the round 1 panel, and then we'll take the questions and answers by chat. I am going to move through pretty quickly since it's only 45 minutes and I want to be able to stop right at 1 and let everybody move on to their next commitment. And we are recording the session so that you can always come back to it, and also share, anybody who's not able to join us can share. I'll post that online in a couple of days once I've gotten it and work with the webmaster to get it up there. As I mentioned, this is one-way audio. You will hear from me most of this time, and I'll take your questions through the chat. We will bring the panelists in later in the session. And if everybody can see that little icon down by their clock, it's the little purple icon, which allows you to submit a question via the chat feature. You can click on there and then just click on chat. And make sure that you address your question to everyone. Yep. So let's move on into background on fund. It is a product of a generous donation by the Mitchell Wolfson Senior Foundation, among others, in recognition of Dr. Padron's 2017 Presidential Medal of The purpose of the fund is to foster and support a sense of experimentation among faculty, to test instructional delivery approaches that they think might improve student engagement, student learning, student success. So students are very much at the center of this discussion, and they should be at the heart of your proposal. This round's priorities have changed a little bit. We are supporting proposals that address or involve a high impact educational practice. Project-based learning is one of those high impact practices, but that's one we are particularly interested to see proposals around. And then digital learning, including open educational resources or OER. So we'll talk a little bit more about the priorities and how they factor into this later on. A very quick summary of the fund. It's for all full-time faculty. Up to 10 awards are given per grant cycle with a maximum award amount of $10,000. The deadline for the submission is February 3rd. That is a Monday. And then we will announce awarded proposals on Monday, March 23rd, 2020. And again, the reason is to foster a sense of experimentation and testing of maybe novel approaches to teaching at the college with student success in mind. And how you would do this, you would submit your proposal online. The proposal has three basic components: the cover page, a narrative that will be a maximum of 5 pages, and the appendices. So obviously the cover page and the appendices do not count towards that 5-page max. You can submit it as a PDF or Microsoft Word document. There are more specs along the lines of the formatting of the proposal in the RFP, so be sure that you visit that RFP and go through it with a fine-tooth comb so you make sure you're aware of other restrictions or requests. And then again, you'll submit your proposal online. This is what the little online form looks like. If you go to the website, which I'll show you later, those are the buttons. The top one is for the RFP, the complete RFP, that greener button. The bottom is for the proposal cover sheet, and because that's a Word file, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then you'll fill out the form below and upload your proposal when you're ready. So let's talk about the proposal cover page. Like I said, I put that in Word so that you could just download it and use it as a template and type it right in there. So feel free to do that. You don't need to create your own cover page. Just grab this one and complete it. Several things to note about the cover page. Faculty can present propose by themselves or with a group. So this is your chance to signal to the review committee that you are doing a collaboration project with other faculty. So those extra signature lines there are for those extra faculty, and they should all be identified at the top too. Name of faculty member, it could be plural if there's multiple. So that's a signal to us that this is a group project. The chairperson does need to sign the cover page to acknowledge that they are aware of the project, they support the project, and they understand their role in its implementation. Chairs do play an important role in the implementation. So it's not an approval page, it's a support. So we do want to make sure the chairpersons are involved from the very beginning, because as I said, they will be instrumental to your implementation. The cover page will be removed from your proposal when we move into the review process, because we would like to provide a blind review process for all proposals, which takes me to another suggestion. I'll go ahead and put it out there that when you're writing the narrative of your proposal, if you would like it to be reviewed anonymously or blindly, then do not put your name in the narrative. Just refer to yourself as the faculty member. And if you have multiple faculty members, find a way to identify faculty member A, faculty member B, or the criminal justice faculty member and the faculty librarian, whatever the roles are, that's fine. but this cover page will be removed so that we can keep the process blind. And I think that's all I have to say about the cover page. The narrative has these 7 components, and I'll move through them now. Again, what I'm about to do is sort of an overview, and I strongly recommend that you all look at the RFP itself and read every section, every word, and make sure that you're addressing all the questions that show up in these subtopics, because I'm not going over every single one of them. So the project overview, here's where you're just going to give us an overview, obviously, of your project. You'll talk about the goals of the project in terms of student engagement, learning, and or success. The impact of the project on teaching and learning at the college, and which MDC learning outcomes your project supports and aims to address. And we put a number on that because it's not necessary to have a long laundry list of LOs that you want to try and address. The more LOs you put into your proposal, the more complicated it becomes in terms of measuring impact. So 3 is the max. We recommend 1 is perfectly fine. What you do also want to do in this section, though, is to explain how your project is going to impact or support the learning outcomes. So just listing outcome is not sufficient. You need to explain how the project will support the learning outcome. Moving into the rationale, you'll talk about the anticipated educational impact of your project. What knowledge, skill, or quality gap are you going to address? Here's where you'll tell us your hypothesis or your research question. And the bulk of this will be presented as an overview of the literature. How's your project going to build on or extend beyond what's already been studied on this topic? So one of the webinars that we're offering, it's in early November, is actually on writing a lit review. So if this is a new process for you, or maybe it's just been a while and you would like some pointers on it, please join us in that November webinar. The project design is where you will explain to us the approach that you will take to achieve your stated project goals. Needs to include a timeline, a plan for implementation, something along the lines of who, what, when, by when, how, this kind of thinking. So a clear timeline showing us that you've through how this is going to be implemented. And then this 3rd bullet is important. We need you to just clearly state if the success of your project depends heavily on collaboration with internal offices or external agencies. It's fine if they do. It's fine. That's not a, it does not a factor in the review. We just want to know, because if you are going to heavily depend on external agencies or even internal offices, we ask for letters of support so that those partners know that you are involving them in this project, and that they have the bandwidth, they have the capacity to support you, and they're all on board and they're ready to go. So if your project does not depend heavily on this type of collaboration, simply state in this section that just say my project does not heavily depend on collaboration with any internal or offices or external agencies. We just need a clear statement so that we understand that you've thought all the way through this. And if you do, then just provide those letters of support in the appendix. Now, the emphasis here I do want to say is on heavily, because certainly many projects will collaborate with people across the college. But if some office is integral to the implementation of your project, you want to make sure that they're on board, and the review committee is going to want to make sure that they're on board and they understand their involvement. The budget, we'll provide a simple budget with major expenditure categories. The college does have some restrictions on what you can and cannot spend money on, so we're using college funds. So if you have any doubts, you should reach out to restricted accounts, and if you don't know how to do that, you can certainly reach out to me and I'll facilitate that connection. And the budget manager will be the chairperson of the faculty member. And if it's a group of faculty members, then the group will identify which one. You'll tell us who that budget manager will be. So this is a critical piece going back to the role of the chair and why they need to be in on this conversation from the very beginning. Anticipated work product is what will be created, developed, or enhanced at the end of the grant period, and an explanation of how these work products will have a positive impact on the knowledge, skills, or quality gap that you outlined in the rationale of your proposal. So make sure you make that connection. You say this in the rationale, now you need to come back to it in the anticipated work product. There's lots of connections that need to be made across these sections. It is expected that there will be a research component of this project, so we will be looking for your evaluation plan. How will you know your project was successful? Go back to those goals that you stated in your overview and explain how you're going to assess the project's intended impact along the lines of those goals. And this is the closing the loop, right? You aim for this with these goals, and then you say, okay, we hit it, we exceeded it, we struggled with this, we saw great growth here, this is not so great, or whatever. It's all informative, it's all useful. We just want to know the impact of your project on the goals that you had identified. And finally, dissemination of resources refers to your plan for sharing the work products and the results, the research results of the project, or just your general impressions as well, to facilitate the sustainability, scale, and replication of your innovation. Your project will hopefully start a conversation at the college, and if we see that it has a great impact, then we need to think about sustaining it and scaling it and having the data and having the results to back the claim that this is something we all need to be doing, or we need to be doing in this area. Then that's going to help us argue for sustaining and scaling and replicating the idea. Then the last part is the appendix. Number 1 is required, the references from your overview, and then the second one is optional for projects that need letters of support from either an internal office or an external agency. So it's the narrative, that's actually the proposal as a whole. I do want to state, and this is in the RFP, that if you are able to address one of the Innovation Fund priorities that I identified earlier, then that would put your proposal at a competitive advantage. And we'll be looking for clear strategies, feasible strategies, some solid thinking around sustainability, replication, scale of the innovation across the college, across the discipline, across your campus, whatever is relevant. So these are a couple of points to keep in mind in terms of writing a competitive proposal. We saw this screen before, but I wanted to bring you back. This is the website. Hopefully by now you all know it because you found the link to the webinar. And this is where you would submit your proposal. Again, step 1, download that RFP and read through it carefully. And then when you're ready to propose, you have the cover sheet for the proposal that you can use there as a template. Very quickly about the review committee. The review committee will be appointed by the executive vice president and provost. It will be composed of 1 dean of faculty and 4 full-time faculty members. There will be 2 non-voting representatives from the district level in order to facilitate the process and the discussion. And the points you saw as I went through the narrative, the different sections of the proposal are weighted differently. So that's the point distribution, and you're teachers, so you all know what different point weights mean in terms of importance of sections. The review process, so the review committee will meet and review and make recommendations. The vice provost for academic affairs will review and make final recommendations, and then the executive vice president and provost will review the recommendations and consider for approval. Some quick proposal tips. Read the RFP closely. I already said this, and I can't say it enough. Just going through this webinar is not enough. Go to the RFP and go through it closely. Think about the priorities and how your idea might fit into one of them. Give thought to sustainability, scale, and replication. Answer all the questions clearly, thoroughly, and concisely. As I said before, I've gone over sections of the proposal or the RFP somewhat cursorily today, so you definitely need to go and dig in a little deeper and read all the questions and make sure you're being concise and thorough in your answers. And I can't say enough either. Consult your campus colleagues for input on project design and proposal development. Talk to your chair, talk to your faculty dean. If you don't have a chairperson right now, talk to your faculty dean, talk to your associate dean. Speak with the people in learning resources. They can help you with your review of the literature. And any offices that are instrumental or even just supportive of the implementation of your project. The more you shop your idea around, the more input you'll get on it and a better, well-rounded proposal you'll be able to put together. You should know that if awarded, you will need to attend a series of informational and support meetings throughout the grant period. We'll do them as meetings or webinars as able. We'll ask you to share your proposal, progress, results, and deliverables in a variety of modes, such as college-wide events and print or digital formats. And you will be expected to submit an interim and final report to include narrative and budget components. And release of any task points related to this work will depend on those reports coming in a timely manner. So quick, what to expect. As I mentioned before, we'll announce awards in March. Again, this is an approximation because things shift around, but this announcement deadline will not shift. We'll provide a series of support meetings to get you going and working on your project from the budget side, from the research side, and we'll ask budgets to be due to restricted accounts in May. You will run your own budget, and that's not easy. I can tell you, as someone who's gone from faculty to administrative role, budgets are hairy and scary at the college, and just know that you need as many partners on that as possible. Summer is your time, so you'll use it as you see fit. I imagine you're probably doing some early planning, some development, and then you come back in the fall that we'll expect to see some maybe further development, implementation of the project. In December, the interim report will be due, narrative and budget components. Spring, you'll continue to implement and begin to study the impact, collecting data in the summer, analyzing the data, and then in September, we'll have a final report due with work products to be included. So that is a whirlwind blow through the RFP, and we're ready to move to our panel awardees from round one. Hanari, I'm going to ask you to Eduardo Araujo Praderi from Homestead Campus, and Professor James Lay is with him as well, and Marlene Morales. And we're going to hear from Professor Lay and Professor Araujo Praderi first. So I'll ask Hanari to unmute their mics or make sure that we can hear from them. And I've asked the awardees to talk about these parts, these elements of their experience, just a quick overview of their projects, some successes and challenges in their experience, growth as a faculty member, because this is definitely a professional development experience. I'm sure that they grew, and I asked them to speak a little bit about that, and some, one or two words of advice for faculty who are considering proposing. So I'm going to turn it over to Professor Araujo Praderi and Professor Lay, and thank them for being with us today.
Thank you. We are both here, and I will let Dr. Lay to go first.
Sure. Just as an overview of our project, especially for those people that are writing proposals, I think the 60,000 feet view of the project is that laboratory work by non-science majors and even science majors in the community college setting is a kind of understudied phenomenon. So that was the overarching concern that we were looking at, and we were designed student activities that would be incorporated into courses in astronomy and courses in chemistry. So it's kind of interdisciplinary, project-based learning, and we would kind of look at the effectiveness of that in terms of teaching students some fundamental lessons in chemistry and astronomy. Specifically, we had them doing experiments with spectroscopy in the class and outside of the class using telescopes and looking at astronomical objects. And we saw that was there were a few challenges, right? We had to set stuff up, and there was weather that prohibited the astronomy aspect sometimes. But the success was notable, right? We did a pre and post test of our students and saw their learning gains, and their response to science was greatly increased. There was a lot of enthusiasm. Other faculty members have since embraced the project, and the students keep wanting to come back and do it again. So it's been very successful.
So on the second 2 points, and the growth as a faculty member, and finally we will try to add a little more about advice for potential proposals. As a faculty members, I was initially challenged, but we came really quick to enjoy and grow in this cross-disciplinary activity. It was really fruitful. The gain from both the students and the professor were significant with this type of activity that we were doing. The other thing that was at the same time a challenge, but became later on a growth, is that we start dealing with stuff, the kind of stuff that we don't deal here a lot in the community college. As Margaret mentioned, budget is one of the big deals here. You have to be careful. You learn a lot how to do that. Also, traveling through the college, if you are considering something similar, is another challenge, but you get to know what the process and how the process works. So there is a lot that we gain as a faculty from the project, but I will say the most important part is how much the students gain from the projects. So in order to advise, I will let you want to go first with advice for the faculty, I would do that, but you will finish, okay? Our advice for faculty, and I insist on this from the very beginning, coordinate with anyone that would be part or we have some kind of role in your project. From the chair, that would be budget manager, to your collaborators, and if you need something from the student life, have all that things taken care of when you're writing the project. You will realize that that will make your life a lot easier in the future. The second thing, have a clear idea what do you want to do and the associated costs for your activities. That will help you to be very clear when writing the proposal. And I will add one more. This is a competition, so you have to write your best proposal. For that, have a clear idea what is your scientific questions that you want them to answer with the proposal. Make it a research proposal. So you have clear questions and the possibility to have clear answers. Your turn.
My final advice would be choose a topic that you're passionate about, something that you care very much about, because perhaps no one else will.
Thank you. Thank you. And we got that feedback from several round one awardees. So those are very significant comments, and I appreciate you sharing them with us. And there's no doubt there are challenges in this work, and that there's bumps in the road. But if you do the pre-thinking and the collaboration, then you're definitely making your life easier. So thank you, Professor Araujo Perdere and Professor Lay, for that sharing that experience with us. Professor Morales?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Perfect. So I just want to reiterate the same thing that my colleagues were saying about taking this taking a look at this from a research perspective, what we did in our project was we started looking at a need or a problem that we saw, and in our case, it was recruiting science or folks to go into science teaching. So what are some innovative ways that maybe other institutions had been looking at recruiting science teachers or trying to increase the number of science teachers specifically at the secondary level? So a lot of the research that I had read had come across early experiential activities where students were in the field working with K through 12 students, doing hands-on activities related to science and science teaching. So this is what we worked out actually with 3 nonprofit organizations where our students were going out and completing 15 hours at a minimum. And the 3 nonprofits that we worked with were the Everglades National Parks. The students participated in the program that all 4th and 5th grade students go to the Everglades. So our students were actually hands-on engaged and doing some teaching for 4th and 5th graders in South Florida. We also use Manifest, which is another nonprofit that works. It's a nonprofit that works out in areas or communities of need, looking at specifically the STEM workforce and how to improve STEM workforce. So our students were doing some hands-on activities related to science with students in the neighborhood and the areas. And then we worked with Idivia Dream, which is another nonprofit that's also looking at underserved youth, areas in underserved youth related to STEM, and in an aftercare program in an elementary school where they were doing hands-on activities related to STEM activities. So some of the successes that we had were that our college students were actually became role models for many of these K through 12 students. Many of these organizations were lacking with a number of volunteers, so it was very hard for them to execute some of these activities because they did not have folks to go out and help. So these organizations were very grateful and very thankful that our students were out there, and they were also grateful not only that it was our students, because typically the volunteers that they received were retirees. So it was great for these K to 12 students to see college students, and they can, the role model aspect of that. One of the things that we experienced that was a success for our education majors, these were implemented in courses that are at the AA level, not at the baccalaureate level. So typically our students would conduct service learning hours or in classrooms, but most of the time they were spending their hours just either sitting in the back of the classroom, grading papers, or filing. These opportunities really gave them an opportunity to see whether or not teaching was for them, and they were engaged hands-on. So they were taking an active role, they were leading, they were teaching students. So really reaffirmed whether or not teaching was the correct choice for them. Some of the challenges that we had were budgets. Budgets can be challenging, so if you are working with outside institutions, just making sure that you are clear on what the procedures are for setting up outside vendors and getting them paid. The other challenge that we had, we were in a project that was multi-campus, so that was a challenge, the communication of getting payments processed and the MD Connect and who was doing what and when and where. So just understanding, having clarity as far as who's going to be doing that. And I think that they've thought about the process, going through the first round. The other thing that I would say is if you're picking a strategy, an innovative strategy, make sure that everyone is clear on what that definition of the strategy was. For us, it was the experiential hands-on learning experiences. So it wasn't just students going out and lecturing or evaluating K through 12 student work. They had it to be, hands-on in the approach teaching K-12 students. So everyone, we just couldn't just pick any organization. They had to be doing specific things for that. Another challenge that we had was, and I think our previous group mentioned it, was transportation. Students had a real tough time getting out to some of these places. They're not close to campus, so look at innovative ways for how you can resolve the transportation issue, or if you can host, the events on campus. So thinking about it differently, because that was a challenge for us. And just putting enough time and effort. Some suggestions I could give you is putting enough time and effort into the evaluation of the project. That was, I think, what helped us attain or get this project going. And really being clear of how to collect the data, the quantitative or the qualitative data. What tools are you going to be using? How are you going to analyze this data, and being clear on that. Another suggestion that I would say, since it is a research project, if you're looking at it from a research perspective, going through the IRB process, make sure you have your IRB training up to date. Something that was helpful for me was participating in the spring break SOTL before I actually set up the evaluation of the project, and submitting all my paperwork through human subjects. So those are things that were very helpful for me. As far as growth, personally, I've read a lot of research regarding these types of experiences, and typically what you read is in traditional, four-year institutions, undergraduates that have just come out of high school. So really looking at how this experience was going to work with our population and how it impacted them. And it was very positive. Students had about, I think it was almost 85% found the service learning to be really helpful. And one of the things that we also, although we didn't have many converters to go into science teaching, most of the students were more open to teaching science, which typically there's a fear in that from education majors. They kind of steer away from teaching science. So this gave them an opportunity. This is something I can actually do. So that was one of the positive outcomes from that as well.
Thank you, Professor Morales. I'm going to have to stop you there because I want to make sure we have time for questions through the chat feature. And I appreciate you sharing that experience, though, all three of you. Just a moment, yes. Oh, okay. So I did want to share some project tips, but actually our panelists covered a lot of them. So in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is just move through this quickly, because I will put this slide deck up on the website, and anybody can come back and just read these thoughts on their own time. This last one I do want to highlight. Learning communities are very hard to pull off. So these tips come from people from the round one awardees, and there was one project that had a learning community, and they were able to do it one semester but not the other. They pivoted, they made an adjustment, but learning communities, as we all know, are hard to pull off in our environment. So budgets, yes, evaluation, a lot of it we've already heard. So I'm going to put the slides up on the web and let you review them at your on your own time. These are the resources. I've already shared them with you, and I want to get to the questions. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my slide, and I'm going to go in and review the questions and see what kind of questions we have coming up. Do you have a list? Oh, okay, thank you. Hanadi's the best. Okay. So wait a minute. Oh, I'm supposed to not share. How are you sharing your screen? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so do that again. So Hanadi's been collecting our questions. Okay, the question one, does this count as FPD? There is no FPD built into the RFP. So you may go get some training and get some FPD for it, but this does not count as FPD. Professor Molina, is there a limit to the number of faculty that can collaborate on a project? And can a faculty member submit more than one proposal per cycle? All right, so I'm going to say there's no hard no to either one of these questions. I just think you should think wisely before getting on more than one proposal, because there's always the chance that they could both be funded and then you're involved in 2 projects and these take a lot of time. As far as the first one, the limit, again, we don't have a limit. I think the faculty's prerogative to decide how many people need to be in on this. I'm not sure. I would speculate that the larger the group, the harder it is to manage the collaboration. But if you have a process that works, I'm not really feeling like I'm the one that should say that there's a limit. So we'll leave it to the faculty proposers to decide what that magic number is. So the third question about the feedback. We got a lot of feedback after round 1 that the feedback we provided was not sufficient. So that's been revamped, and we are currently, we will still be using a rubric, but it will be very different rubric, and the points that you see that I shared with you in the RFP process when I walked you through the RFP reflect a change. We did not have that point distribution the first go around. So that's one of the changes we've made, and we are looking at a way to provide more feedback from the reviewers to the proposals that are not funded. So I hear that concern, and I feel it with you, and I am very much looking for a way to provide some constructive and very helpful feedback for people who were not funded, but to keep them involved and thinking, okay, maybe I'll strengthen it and try the next time. So I appreciate that question and know that we are thinking about it and looking for the best way to respect our reviewers' time and at the same time get very helpful feedback to the proposers. Question number 4, how do we sign up for IRB training? I will direct you to the Office for Institutional Research for that one. And we are going to have a webinar on the evaluation piece of your proposal. So we may be able to touch on it then. I can see, but we have an Office of Institutional Research and they run that process. So I would, in the short run, put you in touch with the Office of Institutional Research. Hanadi, I don't see your questions. Something happened. Okay. Does the IRB approval need to be completed prior to submitting? No, you don't. That can be done after you, if your project is funded, then you would start that process. I think that Dr. Morales left us, so
I'm still here.
Oh, you are? Okay, I saw you log out. So there's a question there for you. How long did the IRB process take in your experience? Was it a difficult process?
No, I don't think it was a difficult process. I think what you need to be aware of is of the timelines. There are specific timelines for when things need to be submitted in the review process in order for you to implement, because before you implement, you have to absolutely make sure you have approval, so before you start collecting data. So knowing that timeline, because I had to resubmit. So I submitted and I had to resubmit the IRB because I had some minor things that I needed to tweak, and they were very helpful.
Okay, thank you. It is 1 o'clock, and I'm promised to get you out of here on time. So what I'm going to do is review the rest of the questions, and I'm going to build an FAQ page off of the Innovate website and constantly be updating it as these questions come in. You guys are welcome to call me or email me if you have questions that probably an FAQ, maybe it's not the right place to answer that. It's a little bit more of an elaborate answer. So feel free to email me. I am in the phone book. I don't think I shared my information, but again, my name is Margaret Shippey, S-H-I-P-P-E-Y, and give me a call and we can talk about your idea. We can talk about your question, and also check back that website to see updates. So thank you all for joining. I'm losing my tech support person, so I'm going to sign off because I'm nothing without Hanadi. We're signing off. Have a good afternoon, everyone.